just go watch the episode of East Blue. There, boom, done, easy. I don't have to explain nothing in this video. Alright. So this is going to be the last in the 4 Blues little mini-series I'm doing. There are no other regions of the One Piece world for me to talk about, except for Paradise and the New World, and I guess the Calm Belt, if you want to be really technical, and the Red Line. It's the only continent in the One Piece world. That's probably worth a video. I also don't think I've done a video on the Sky Islands, and, oh, there's the moon. Gonna have to make a video on the moon at some point. Does the moon count as geography? That's a philosophical question for you. Does it count as geography if it's not on the planet? Yeah. That'll keep you awake tonight. But anyway, no. This is going to be the episode that's going to be the most extensive because we got 4 Straw Hats coming from the east, an entire freaking arc. No, not just an arc, a saga. An entire saga takes place here. So yeah, let's do it. To the East Blue! Could have sworn the intro was going to... Okay, fine. Just play the intro whenever. What kind of douchebag edits these anyway? Alright, so. East Blue. We got a lot to... Early rendition of Brook, I guess. Look, it looks remarkably similar. Yo! Oda knew what was going on. Oda knew from back during the East. He's like, I'm gonna introduce a rock and roll skeleton at some point, but I gotta wait till the right time. You just can't drop a rock and roll skeleton in the middle of Alabasta. It wouldn't have made no sense. Alright, so, yeah, I normally start these off by talking about the main characters that come from that part of the sea, but in the case with the East Blue, we got 4 Straw Hats. So, you know what? I think the best way for me to handle this is just to go from the beginning of the East Blue and then just tackle each island chronologically as we encounter it in the One Piece, story. So we start off our adventure on Dawn Island, which is home to the Goa Kingdom, where our main hero, the rubber boy himself, the future Pirate King. Sorry, spoilers. I didn't want to spoil anybody. I'm sorry. I ruined the end of One Piece for you. Luffy's gonna be the Pirate King. Go figure. Yeah, now, the interesting thing here with Dawn Island is we start off the story in Fuchsia Village, which is just a tiny little hamlet off to the side. It's like a fishing village. You got a bunch of windmills in the distance. Also, this cow. This cow is a baller. But yeah, it seems picturesque, and it seems like the standard for most main characters in a shonen. Let me see if this rings a bell to anybody that's been reading manga for a long time. How long you've been reading manga? How long have you been reading shonen in particular? I've been reading it for about 12, 13 years now, so let me just throw this out there. I'm a rambunctious little kid that's growing up in a tiny little village out in the middle of nowhere, really, but I have high aspirations to see the world and become the king of the ninja wizards. Yeah, we've heard of it before. Okay, but the cool thing that Oda does is even though we see only, Fuchsia Village as part of Dawn Island, and that's the reason it's called Dawn Island, there's actually a double meaning to that. One is the literal sense of, dawn as in the sun rising. You could look at it as the sun is rising on Luffy's grand adventure, and the other reason it was named that is because of Romance Dawn. Oda really has, a love affair with that phrase, Romance Dawn. In fact, there were 2, rough drafts of the One Piece manga before it became One Piece, pilot chapters, I guess, one-shots, and they were called Romance Dawn V1 and Romance Dawn V2, and then eventually it got turned into One Piece, and the first chapter, the first, I guess, arc, you could say, is the Romance Dawn arc, which features the introduction of Luffy and Shanks. So, that happens to me sometimes. I don't know about you, but I'll get, phrases in my head, a random word generator, be like, man, that would be a cool name for a manga chapter. Let me throw one at you. Okay, if I ever created a manga, at some point I would have some character that has electricity powers, could summon lightning or control the weather or something, and the name of that chapter would be Age of the Thunder Crashers. That sounds cool, right? But okay, that's maybe that's just happened with Oda. He's just sitting around one day in college and he's like, Romance Dawn. I like the sound of that. I'm either going to record an album that has that, or I'm going to write a manga that has that incorporated, one way or the other. With Kubo, it's like Death in the Strawberry, and that leads to, Ichigo and everything. We're actually going to reference Bleach later on in the video. It does loop back around. But yeah, so Dawn Island is not just home to Fuchsia Village, though. Oda kind of changes this around later on in the story, and we find out that Dawn Island is home to a much larger kingdom, the Goa Kingdom, and there's this giant town. It's got a monarchy, there's a castle, there's an inner district, there's kind of like an edge town, like an edge district where all like the lower class live, and then there's a giant wall, and on the outside of that wall, in typical corrupt One Piece noble fashion, there's a massive garbage dump where the dregs of society are literally just pushed out to live in their own refuse and detritus. Yes, that's glorious. I am the king up on top of the hill. Oh, look at those smelly peasants. Just kick them out of my lands. I don't want them here anymore. But king, where are they going to go? There's mountain bandits running around. Like, I don't know. Just throw them in the freaking garbage heap outside of town. Perfect representation for it. And when a world noble was about to, enter the east and visit Goa Kingdom, the king ordered, like, we got to torch this whole freaking, the shanty town that's made out of a garbage heap. We need to just torch the whole thing. Make sure, it doesn't matter if anyone's living there, we got to get rid of it by the time the world nobles show up. Because if they even get one whiff of that garbage, they're going to be hightailing it out of here, and we have to set up a nice operation. Fun fact, we actually never see the king or queen of the Goa Kingdom. Well, kind of. We see the king's lower face. He has a very epic goatee mustache thing going on, but aside from that, we don't know about him. And he's dead now, because later on, Stelly, who is Sabo's adoptive brother that was brought in by Outlook III, who is Sabo's father after Sabo left. You following me so far? Anyway, Stelly got together with, the princess of the Goa Kingdom, whose name was like, it's Nantoinette. It's like a play on Nantucket and Marie Antoinette. But anyway, they get together, and the king and queen just mysteriously die under unknown circumstances. Oda pretty much came out in the Viva Ricard data book and said, yeah, it was because of Stelly. He did something to take out the king and queen, and now Stelly is the new king of the Goa Kingdom, along with his queen, Nantoinette. So that's the situation right now in the Goa Kingdom, so I'm imagining the Gray Terminal and everything, it's probably bigger than ever now that Stelly's in charge, it's just like, even the people that are on the edge town, kick them out, I don't want them here anymore. You also have Mount Colbo, or Colvo, where the mountain bandits tend to reign. You have Curly Dadan there, who is a wanted criminal with a 7.8 million berry bounty by the Coast Guard, not the Marines, the Coast Guard. You also have Higuma. Higuma was kind of like the head mountain bandit, I guess, because he had an 8 million berry bounty, but he got eaten by a giant sea king, so we don't have to worry about Higuma anymore. And Fuchsia Village itself, we have Mayor Woodslap. I think his name is like Mayor Wood Swap or something. It's not slap, but it sounds like, I'm gonna slap you with my cane, I'm gonna slap you with my wood, so I just call him Mayor Woodslap. And he's this kind of gruff old dude, and he's like, yeah, freaking Luffy running around being a pirate. Does he understand that that's giving this town a bad name? But at the same time, it's like, come on, Mayor, we all love Luffy. I'm like, yeah, whatever. Makino also comes from there, who may or may not be Shanks's baby mama. We're not 100% sure on that, but I think the evidence is clearly indicative of something there. And that's Party's Bar, where it seems like the story kind of began, because that's where Luffy was chilling out with Shanks and everybody, and that's when Higuma came in and, had that big ruckus, and then Shanks just ignored him, but then later on, things went south. So yeah, that's the Goa Kingdom, that's the East, that's where Luffy grew up. Ace also grew up there, however, keep in mind, Ace was actually born in the South Blue to Rouge, and then Garp, took him and then, placed him in Dadan's care on Mount Colbo, because Garp couldn't care after a baby, and so yeah, so he's not technically from the East. Sabo is from the East. Sabo grew up in the Goa capital, and then fled into Gray Terminal because he didn't want to grow up in that kind of society. It's also important to mention at this point, before I forget, and since I mentioned Garp, the entirety of the monkey family that we know of so far, so Luffy, his father Dragon, and his grandfather Garp, all come from the Goa Kingdom. It's been probably a very long time since Garp himself has lived there. Dragon is in his 50s. He probably left a very long time ago. I'm actually going to do another theory video about Luffy's mom because there's been some developments. We'll get to that when we get to that. But anyway, yeah. And of course, Luffy grew up there as well, exploring Mount Kolbo and Grey Terminal and had the whole thing with Sabo. And then after we thought Sabo was dead, Luffy and Ace trained until Ace set out to sea. And then eventually when Luffy became 17, he sets out to sea, punches out the aforementioned giant sea king, and then continues on his grand adventure. So, something interesting about the East also is, I think it was in the earlier data books, we got a lot more information, more so than any other region, because, is there a North Blue arc? Is there a South Blue arc? I don't think so. There's an East Blue saga. Alright, that trumps your arc, right? So, I think a lot of the data books, Oda, wanted to really, kind of expand upon this one region, okay? Maybe Oda, I would love a One Piece, atlas, I would love for Oda to come out with that. The next art book should just be that. Here's the One Piece World Atlas, and it should have the geography as everything logo on it, Oda. You can use this whenever you want, man. It would be awesome. And it just, here are all the islands in the west, here are all the islands in the first half of the Grand Line, the ones that the Straw Hats never went to, here's the location of, where Baltimore is, where Frankie got sent, here's all the islands. I would love that. I would buy that shit in a millisecond. I don't care if I'd have to, go to Japan to get a first edition copy. I would do it. Alright, that would be beautiful. But, obviously you can't do that. Maybe he could get, somebody else at some point might elaborate on the One Piece world, and some people already have. They've written light novels, and even with the Ace side story in the magazine and the novels, they've introduced an island in the East Blue called Sixus, which is a deserted island where Ace ran into Mass Deuce and where he consumed the Marimari. So we'll have stuff like that, but in terms of Oda himself, he only really could focus on the East. The other regions aren't as important. It's the Grand Line where the bulk of this story takes place, so that only makes sense. But my point is, the whole reason I brought that up, the supplemental material thing, is because in the actual East Blue saga, we're only vaguely name drop locations. Luffy goes to Shell Town. We don't know the island it's on. It's this is Shell Town. Then we go to Syrup Village, where Usopp grew up, and Orange Town, where Buggy set up his operations. We don't find out the name of the islands these towns and villages are on until a little bit later in the data books, but we find out about that now. So, for instance, it is the Yotsuba Island region where Shelltown is located, alright? Yotsuba, that reminds me of Death Note for some reason. But anyway, the Yotsuba Islands. So we don't know anything else about the islands except for Shelltown, but it's nice to at least elaborate, it's not just some random town floating on the ocean. It's no, it's part of an archipelago. I'm oh, makes sense. So Shelltown is, the first place that Luffy ends up on his journey, alright? He's on his little dinghy, sailing out to sea, the bright, morning of a new adventure. I got my tiny little dinghy, I got my straw hat, and my red vest, and my cut-off jean shorts, and my sandals, and a bucket full of apples. Thought I would have hit the next island by now. What happens now? Well, what happens now is a giant whirlpool comes out of nowhere and is about to suck you in, Luffy. But luckily, Luffy jumped in the barrel, got really lucky, and then ended up on Alvida's ship, and then eventually rescued Kobe, and they ended up on Shelltown. That's their first proper destination. Now, Shelltown is home to a marine base. That's kind of the main attraction there. It's kind of up on top of a hill, lording over the town. Like with most marine bases, the town is pretty much there to make sure that the marine base is properly stocked, enough food and water and everything are coming through there. So they have ports and everything. And the lord of this entire island, when Luffy arrived, was, of course, the epic and great, the most amazing marine ever. He should have been a fleet admiral at age 10, Captain Morgan! Which, by the way, I hear is the name of a very popular vodka. I'm just kidding. I know it's a rum. Anyway, so Morgan ruled over this entire island. His ego was actually getting to the point where he was about to erect a giant statue of himself on top of the marine base. That's not a disproportionate use of government funding at all. I wonder how that worked. He goes to the townspeople we're collecting taxes. Why, sir? Are we building a new battleship to go fight the evil pirates? Nah, I just want to build a giant statue. I don't think we need a giant statue. Yeah, and I don't think you need your house. Keep in mind, I have an axe for a hand. Okay, the man has an axe for a hand. You know, ladies and gentlemen, we're building a statue, I guess. Here, take my shilling. So, right when he's about to build the statue, that's when Luffy shows up and knocks the whole thing down. He frees Zoro, who was being held by Helmeppo and being starved for 30 days. We also have that little girl that brought Zoro the rice balls that, you know, lived on the island as well. I forget her name. It's, oh, right, no, I know this one. It's, crap, what was it? Random rice ball girl. No, oh, it was Rika. Rika, that was it. I think it was Rika. And so, you know, she would bring Zoro the rice balls for helping her, and then eventually Helmeppo and, you know, Morgan get defeated, and then they leave Shell Town. They get a somewhat better ship at this point, at least has a decent sail, and so they go off and they end up in the Organ Islands this time. The Organ Islands is where Orangetown is located. Orangetown is a sort of colonial kind of place that was built 40 years prior by a guy named Boodle, who is this older dude that wears like very, like, I don't know, cooking pots as armor or whatever. You gotta make do. Everything was pretty peaceful in this town until the clown pirates attacked. So yes, this was the place that Buggy chose to dock his ship for a little while. It was like slightly before Luffy and the group arrived. I say Luffy and the group, but it's really just Luffy and Zoro at this point. And so they just kind of have fun in the town and just wreck whatever they want to wreck, and the townspeople have to flee to the edge of the island, and Boodle stays behind to defend his town, and then Luffy and Zoro show up. Nami's here at this point. They defeat Buggy, and they manage to get away. This was also like the first time that they were not heroes. They're pirates, so they're still going to be detested, but they get out of the town just fine. And there was also a little dog there that was like guarding the pet shop that its owner left behind, kind of like Hachiko, you know, the dog that waited for its owner at the train station in Japan, because eventually the owner died while he was away at work, and the dog Hachiko, you know, waited there until he died as well. So very, very tragic story. They made a few movies about it. There's one called Hachiko, A Dog's Tale, which is an American remake of the story, and I've seen it, and it's very depressing, especially if you have a dog. I had an older beagle when I watched that movie, and I'm just like, oh, that's sad. That's like, my dog's probably gonna die soon. So it's a good movie. Just be careful when you watch it. But everything's pretty good right now. The town's been built up, and even the pet store is a lot bigger now, and the dog is still alive, and Boodle is still there, and the town is doing quite well now that Buggy has been ejected from it. So the next location we go to, it's actually a little bit contentious here. If you're reading the manga, the next island that the crew goes to is actually the island of rare animals where Gaimon is found. In the manga, it was just Luffy, Zoro, and Nami that got there. In the anime, they waited until after the Syrup Village arc with Usopp, and then Usopp was also present on the island. Not really a big deal because the island of rare animals and Gaimon kind of fall in the category of canon filler, if that makes sense. It's like, yeah, it did happen in the canon of the story. Gaimon is canon, it's just we don't reference him anymore after this, so it really doesn't matter. I mean, it's not like they're gonna like, oh, we have to go back to the rare animal island. That's something very integral there. But Gaimon was a cool guy, and hey, eventually he even found love, because in the cover page, way later in the story, after the time skip, we find out there's a barrel woman by the name of Sarfunkel that also somehow ended up stuck in a barrel and somehow ended up stuck on his island, and but they're a couple, so that's great. How does it work? How do you get... I don't know. Maybe it involves his afro in some way. I don't know. But also on the island are a bunch of crossbred animals. So you have, like, chicken foxes. That must be a bit of a paradigm. And, like, pig lions. And I think there was, like, a turtle elephant at some point. You know, so kind of like all the animals that did exist in Avatar. Well, boom! I made 2 Avatar The Last Airbender references in this video so far. But yeah, kind of something like that. It was a nice little break from the action, I suppose. Alright, so moving on to the, it was the Gecko Islands and Syrup Village is where Usopp is from. Just a really tiny village, kind of reminiscent of Fuchsia. This is where Usopp and Yasopp grew up, as well as Banshina, who is Usopp's mother, who died when Usopp was very young. Yasopp, of course, left out to sea with Shanks at the great age of piracy to begin his own pirate career, and Usopp is essentially left as the boy who cried wolf, until eventually the wolf actually showed up. Actually, it turns out the wolf has been sleeping next to you for the last 3 years because it's Kuro. Now, I guess there is a family that has some prestige and some wealth because this is where Kaya's family lived, and they have the giant mansion on the edge of town. So I want to assume that maybe Kaya's family at some point, I don't know, were they had an industry on maybe another island, and then they moved to the Gecko Islands, or maybe there was like some industry, like some textiles or something industry that Kaya's family rule over the entire, Gecko Islands, and their base of operations is there. I'm just saying, you don't get a giant mansion on the edge of town in some random village. I live in some random village, and I'll tell you what, there's only one mansion in town, and it's that creepy guy that has scissors for hands, and nobody goes up there anymore. But aside from that, we don't have any mansions in town, right? So it's like, the money had to come from somewhere. Not really much to talk about here. There's a place where the veggies, the pirates, the Usopp pirates used to gather, and then there was like a diner, kind of like a tiny little, greasy spoon place where Luffy met Usopp, and it's like the meeting place for everybody. And then there's the docks of the town where the Black Cat pirates tried to make their attack, and then Luffy stopped them. So then there's that. The rest of the island is just like forests and things. So not much else to talk about that in terms of geography. Our next location is actually the Baratie, and the Baratie is not an island, it's a floating restaurant that's actually pretty close to the Grand Line. So, if we start the East Blue like over here on Dawn Island, and it's like here's Shelltown, here's Orangetown, here's Gecko Island, here's the Grand Line. It's like pretty much near the perimeter there. That's where the Baratie is anchored. Not really anchored, it's like designed to be a floating vessel, so even in rough waves it can kind of balance out and it doesn't get capsized. But it's the floating restaurant. Now, Sanji, of course, works at the restaurant, but as you can see, there's no Sanji here because he, of course, grew up in the North Blue and then ended up in the East after the whole incident with the Vinsmokes. But Zeph probably grew up in the East. In fact, actually, we don't even know that for certain because Zeph, he was the pirate. He was the captain of the Cook Pirates beforehand, so he might have been from the East. He might not have been. But during that pirating escapade, they ended up on a rock out in the middle of nowhere in the east, and they were starving to death until eventually they got rescued. And after that whole ordeal, they're like, hey man, we'll be together forever after enduring that, right? And so they built their dream, which is the seafaring restaurant. Growing up with the 4Kids dub, the Baratie arc was my favorite arc. I just really got immersed into it. I really love Sanji as a character. And you know what the funniest thing is? When I was like 12 years old watching the Baratie arc and, seeing Sanji, even though he had the horrible, Brooklyn accent, hey Nami-chan, how you doing? Even though they had that going on, I still really liked the character and I liked the setting. And when I was 12, I thought for myself, hey, maybe I can be a cook someday. And I kind of forgot about it for very long. Up until the last few months, I've been cooking like crazy. I've been trying to learn as much stuff. I'm going to be making some ramen soon. I'm trying to learn at least like looking at all these different dishes from all over the world and just being like, I want to see if I can make some French dishes or some. I've already made a bunch of Italian and Greek dishes. I made a French dish. I made a souffle. That's a thing. So I'm just going to look at all these regions. But no, I'm going to be tackling ramen pretty soon. I'm going to try to make an actual bowl of ramen that tastes better. At least my goal is to get better than the Top brand ramen. If I can one-up that, I think I should be good, because I don't like Top ramen. I think it tastes like, sewer water mixed with styrofoam. I'm not a fan of that. But I think I might have offended a lot of people just now. I don't know. I'm not a fan of it. But anyway, yeah. So cooking, it's a thing. It's a big important arc for me. This is also where we get introduced to the most single badass character in all of One Piece. That's right, I'm talking about none other than Don Krieg! Come on out! You know why? Because I love saying his name. Don Krieg! You gotta get the neck vein going for the Krieg! Okay? Well, Geen also shows up, and Geen is a cool character. I hope he comes back at some point. Don Krieg was impressive because even though his pirate crew's power wasn't very high, the intimidation factor of it was. He had a giant flagship, a galleon called the Dreadnought Saber, and a bunch of other ships behind him. He had 50 ships and over 5,000 men. This guy, he wasn't that effectual of a pirate, and this is really the main arc where we find out in the East Blue just how dangerous the Grand Line is, because Oda's like, man, we're getting pretty close to the Grand Line. I really got to start to hammering in how dangerous that place is. So we see Krieg's ship coming back, the Dreadnought Saber torn to shreds, all of his other ships wiped out in the Grand Line and in the combat trying to get back, and Krieg and his men are just like ragged. 5,000 men, maybe like, I don't know, a few dozen are left, and they're just starved, they're all beaten to crap, they're covered in wounds, probably the scurvy is setting in, and eventually we find out it's all because of just one man, who is of course Dracul Mihawk, and we find out about him in this arc. So a lot of stuff gets dropped on us in the Baratie. It's just like, hey, we met Yosaku and Johnny, they seem like a cool little band of bounty hunters. Hey, let's go to the Seafaring Restaurant. That's a cool design. Boom, we find out about Zeph. Boom, we find out about Sanji. Boom, we see Don Krieg. Boom, we find out about Sanji and Zeph's backstory. Boom, we have Mihawk there. Like, a lot of crap going on in this arc. Of course, Zoro gets cut down. That wasn't his finest day. But at the end of it, Krieg is defeated, and then, you know, everyone's getting ready to go. Sanji says his tearful goodbye to his friends, the cooks, and then Zeph, of course. And Zeph even has a moment where he presents Sanji, or I think it was Luffy, with his logbook. He's like, here's everything we documented in the Grand Line. You know, we didn't make it very far, and there's so much in that sea that doesn't make any sense, but if you want it, you can have it. And Luffy decides not to take it because of, you know, he wants it to be his own adventure, but he does appreciate the thought. And in the 4Kids dub, they actually switch it around, you know, because they remove the Reverse Mountain arc, like the Twin Capes with Laboon and Crocus in the 4Kids. But the problem with that is we get, like, an explanation of the Grand Line in that little mini-arc. It was only, like, a few chapters, but we find out a lot about the Reverse Mountain and the Grand Line there. We find out about how the log pose works and even what a log pose is. And so the 4Kids arc rewrites it where it's Zeph that gives Sanji the instructions on how to use a log pose and how to navigate the Grand Line, which, I gotta give it to 4Kids, not really what happened in the manga, but you can't say it doesn't make sense. Zeph journeyed to the Grand Line. He would have had a log pose. He would have at least known the basics of how to navigate the sea. So that's Baratie. Moving on to the second to last and the kind of grand finale. Loguetown is the last arc of the East Blue Saga, but it's really the Arlong Park arc that brings it all home. You know, this is the arc where we find out about the history of Nami, and Luffy has, you know, his first, like, serious fight in the series, I guess. I mean, yeah, the first few fights were pretty much just warm-up acts, like Alvida, he just, like, one-shots her off her ship. Oh, by the way, there was also an island, I believe it was Goat Island. Now, this is where it gets tricky, because there's also a Goat Island that's later on in the post-Alabasta fillers, where there's an old man named Zenny who's trying to build a pirate ship, and that's also filled with goats, but that's filler. This is canon, the Goat Island in the East Blue, which, hey, there's a lot of goats in the One Piece world, guys. There could be more than one Goat Island. But that's the place where Alvida apparently had, like, her home base of operations, right? But anyway, that's not really relevant. Luffy one-shots Alvida off her ship. Zoro takes out Morgan. Luffy takes out Buggy, also with really just one attack with the bazooka after Nami restrains him. Just one shot is enough to take him out of town. Kuro, alright, Kuro gave Luffy some problems, but it really just ended with Kuro being like, check it out, I can move super fast! Zip, 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 zip! And then Luffy just grabs him and then just trips him like, you freaking dipshit. And he falls on his face and he just does the Gumu Gumu no Bell and cracks his skull, and there you go. So Kuro gave Luffy a little bit of problems. Krieg was just annoying with the poison, you know, the darts and the gas and everything. But Luffy was still able to take him out with little to no problems. But then you get to Arlong, and you can tell Arlong at this point, at least compared to Luffy's power level, alright, you know, Luffy might be a little bit up there, but Arlong, he's got some power to pack it. He's not all talk. It's not like he's just ruling over this island and he doesn't have anything to back it up. He's wicked strong. He has all these different techniques involving his teeth. He's got the giant sawtooth sword that just slice you down. Oh, while I'm on the subject of an awesome sword, I want to bring up, by the way, that Artor over at the Library of Ohara is actually doing, he's coming up with it. It's going to be like an encyclopedia of the swords in the One Piece world. world. And I'm a patron of his, and I got like a sneak preview of that. So I'm going to put a link there below just because that was a pretty cool idea. And look forward to that project in 2019. Really cool thing there. But yeah, he's got the sawtooth sword. So Luffy gave him some problems. Luffy got banged up pretty bad in that fight. He was bleeding a little bit there. Even more than a little bit. He got bit, So, but eventually it all ends at the top of Arlong Park, and he just wrecks the whole thing. So, Arlong Park is located in Kokoyashi, which is part of the Konomi Islands, and once again, we only get to really see Kokoyashi. Kind of a more tropical island is the Komi Islands, because we get to see, like, palm trees and everything, as opposed to the more traditional, like, just regular oak trees and stuff that we saw throughout the, East Blue. But we get to Arlong Park, and it's kind of tropical, so probably a little bit closer there. We're getting closer to the equator and the Grand Line and everything there. Also, I seem to have skipped over Zoro's Island, and that's because I was going chronologically, and we don't actually stop at Zoro's Island during the story. We go from, Luffy finds Zoro in Shelltown, and then we move on to Orangetown. But Zoro grew up in the, I'm gonna mess this up because it's Japanese, I'm glad I wrote these down. He grew up in the Shimosuke village, okay? Shimosuke, that was the name of the village, and that's actually an old name for the month of November because it means frost moon. All of the moons have a very specific name, and it depends on which calendar you're looking at and which region and which time of the world you're looking at. This one right here states November is the beaver moon. Okay, but in some contexts, it's also referred to as the frost moon, and the reason that's pertinent is, like, why is it November? Well, that was Zoro's birth month, so that's the reason. And in Shimosuke. I'm gonna mess it up at some point. Shimosuke Village, there is Isshin Dojo. And Isshin, there's the other Bleach reference if you were waiting for it. Wait, Zoro was trained by Isshin Kurosaki? It makes sense now. Well, Zoro can light people on fire with his sword, so I guess it makes sense. But no, this is where Koshiro and Kuina also grew up. Koshiro, he was born in the East Blue, but I don't know. There's a lot about his dojo and Shimosuke Village in general that have a very feudal Japanese vibe to it. So even though Koshiro might have been born in the East, he could have went to Wano at some point and then come back, and then he maybe could have modeled his dojo based off of Wano. Or it could just be maybe, early on in the story, maybe Oda, he wanted to have a samurai-based arc at some point, but he didn't know when, and he just threw in, like, well, Zoro is a very Japanese kind of guy. He uses katanas, he has the sash and everything, so why not have him grow up in a kind of typical feudal Japan kind of looking village instead of, it doesn't have to be connected to Wano, but it's possible, you can always circle that back and connect those dots. Speaking about connecting dots, there's also the Goa Kingdom. Oikot is a place we've never seen. It was just referenced in the Viva Card data book. This is the region where Nami and Nojiko are originally from. So remember, Nami and Nojiko, for one thing, are not blood sisters. They were living in the Oikot Kingdom. They might have known each other, or they might have known their families or something, but they're not blood related. And there was a war that broke out in the Oikot Kingdom. The Marines got sent, I guess, to maybe deal with the uprising, or we don't know exactly the nature of the situation, if it was a rebellion against the government there or what, but Bellamere shows up, and in this war-torn country, she in fact finds Nojiko and Nami and adopts them and brings them back to her hometown, which was Kokoyashi Village. And Oikot is just Tokyo spelled backwards, so yeah, Oda at that point was just like, I need to come up with a clever name for this place where Nami and Nojiko... he was probably sitting there writing the Viva card out, and he's like, oh wait, where did Nami and Nojiko come from? Because they didn't grow up in the East. Oikot, I gotta get these done. I don't have time. I'm busy writing giant dragons showing up out of nowhere. Oikot Kingdom, boom, done. Send it to the editor, right? But yeah, there's that. We also have some other miscellaneous locations throughout the East Blue, before we get to Loguetown, which is where I wanted to end it out at, because that's the finale. Loguetown is so symbolic, because it's like, this is our last chance for romance, basically. Romance done. It's like, get our supplies. This is the place where Roger was executed. I love that Oda did that. He incorporated, because really, if you think about it, Roger should have been executed at Marineford. Like why wouldn't they execute the king of the pirates at the Marine HQ, but I guess they did it in Loguetown for a symbolic thing, and that's what Loguetown is. Luffy visits the place, he sees where Roger was executed, and basically has, I guess, one more chance to, like, hey, we could stop here if you want. The Grand Line is dangerous. It's the pirate graveyard. Are we gonna go and do this? And Luffy's like, yep, I've seen everything I have to see. I'm ready to leave the kiddie pool and jump into the adult jacuzzi. Okay, that sounded really wrong, but, like, let's go, right. So we'll save Loguetown for the end, but first we got some miscellaneous locations. We have Mirror Ball Island, which was actually the setting for Django's Dance Dance Carnival. Oh yeah, baby! Oh yeah, moonwalk. Ow! Shamon! So yeah, he does his thing there. That's where he meets Full Body, and Django's about to be executed at the the trial, and Full Body vouches for him, and he whips up the entire courtroom, even the judges and the jury, to break out into a dance number. And the judge was so happy about this, he lets Django go. He's like, oh man, you guys are great. I haven't had this much fun in the courtroom in forever. Oh, by the way, yeah, I'll let you go, but the condition is you both have to be Marines, and I'm demoting Full Body to the rank of Seaman Recruit. Basically because I just find the word seaman funny. Alright, everybody, I hereby decree this court funky! Okay, so that's Mirror Ball Island. Okay, we also have Goa Kingdom. Goa Kingdom, it sounds rather cozy. It's actually based off a national landmark in Romania. But anyway, this is the location where the Germa 66 invaded. So the whole reason they went to the East Blue is because they were contracted by a neighboring kingdom to attack the Goa Kingdom. We don't know what the neighboring kingdom was. Maybe the neighboring kingdom was the Oikot Kingdom. Maybe, like, the Goa Kingdom attacked the Oikot Kingdom back during when Nami was a little baby, and then the Marines saved them, and the Oikot Kingdom recovered, and they're like, we're gonna get back at those we're gonna take out the Goa Kingdom, show them to be based off a Romanian freaking national landmark. You know what? We're hiring the Germa 66. And they hire the Germa, they scale the entire red line, plop down in the east, and then they go after the Goa Kingdom, and this is where Sanji gets separated and gets on the Orbit being that cruise ship, and they escape, and then that's where Zeph and Sanji's story, connects there. Right, okay. We also have Sixus, which is the deserted island that I talked about earlier with Ace and Mass Deuce. I believe that's all really there, and, Lost Island. Lost Island is a island filled with dragons that we just don't talk about. Also, there's a weird little girl there that can talk to animals, but we have Chopper for that now. And then finally, we just have Tequila Wolf. Tequila Wolf is the place where Robin was sent by Kuma. Very different location compared to all the rest of the East Blue. Up until this point, the East Blue has been either very temperate or tropical even, but not Tequila Wolf. This is definitely some place that's located in the north, maybe in the Arctic air region there. Tequila Wolf isn't even an island. It's actually a bridge. 700 years ago, the world nobles, for whatever reason, they probably could have just been drunk on Captain Morgan, like, hey, okay, we want you guys, because we're the world nobles and we, like, can do whatever we want. We can do whatever we want, right? Yes, sir, you can do whatever you want. Okay, awesome. We want you to build a bridge from that side of the East Blue to that side of the East Blue. Are you serious? Yeah, I'm serious. Build that bridge. That's not feasible. Oh, you can do it. Just make sure that you make your kids do it, and then your grandkids, and then your great-grandkids, and your great-kids. You know where I'm going with this. Just keep going down the line. You'll finish it someday. Okay, well, what would the bridge be for? I don't know. I guess I could walk my dog on it someday. Just finish the bridge. So, I exaggerate, a little bit of hyperbole there, but that honestly could be the situation, how it happened, because that's how corrupt this system is. So there's like, yeah, build a bridge from point A to point B. It took 700 years, and they're not even close to getting done with it yet. And the place basically turned out to be like a timeline, because as you're building the bridge, you also have to build, like, the quarters so the workers can work and the people can actually live there as well, because they're building the bridge while they're living on said bridge, right? There's no other location, right? So if you keep traveling back along this bridge, and this thing extends for hundreds of miles, or hundreds of kilometers for my non-American viewers. How dare the rest of the world use metric? You should be like us. Nah, I think it should be the other way around. But it's like, yeah, this thing stretches on for a long-ass time. And finally, the Revolutionary Army liberates it shortly after Robin arrives there, and she has her sexy prison time, because even in frigid temperatures, she's still got to let the girls out at that point. Like, okay, Robin, I'm not complaining. The funniest thing here, and I just thought of this would be very mean. Wouldn't it suck if they were this close to finishing the bridge by the time the Revolutionary Army liberated? Because think about the hardships of these people. These people and their parents and parents' parents and their parents' parents, and I'm sure they bring in new workers all the time. It's the world government. They have no shortage of slaves, but it's like, you think that there's at least people that have been working on this bridge for like 10 generations, you know, like 700 years ago. And they're like, someday the bridge will be finished. And they're like right about to finish the bridge, and then the Revolutionary Army liberates it. It'd be like, yay, we're free! But, I mean, you know what? No, we're taking the freedom. It's worth it. But, damn. Alright, whatever. I'm taking the freedom. Let's go. Let's just turn my head so I don't even look at it anymore. Like, they could see the island it was supposed to connect to. Because you'd figure they would eventually hit the red line at some point, you know? But that's Tequila Wolf, somewhere in the north. Okay, so we're ending it out now on the Pole Star Islands, sweet name, by the way, which is also the location of Loguetown, or Roguetown, as it is in the 4Kids. This is another example of 4Kids. Not exactly a horrible change. L's and R's in Japan, you know, they get, you know, you can switch because it sounds very similar, but either way, I think it works. Loguetown because prologue and epilogue, the beginning and end of Goldie Roger, and also Roguetown because, as we all know, Goldie Roger was a handsome and dashing rogue. Don Krieg! Alright, but yeah, Loguetown, not really much to talk about. It's also kind of like a colonial kind of setup, kind of city. I got vibes coming from it. Cobblestone streets and all of that. The gallows are, of course, the main attraction. This town square where the gallows where Goldie Roger was executed at. There's also the marine base where Tashigi and Smoker were working at. There's the port, obviously. In the anime, they add a few more things, like the Daddy Masterson thing, and there's also that bar in the anime that Luffy runs into, and you see that old dude, I think his name is Raoul. That's a fun name to say, Raoul! And he's talking about how badass Goldie Roger was. Like, oh, these pirates these days, you know, they're all crap. But Goldie Roger, man, he was a real pirate. Boy, hand me some of that Captain Morgan. All right, that's some good stuff right there. And then eventually Smoker shows up and talks to the dude. And that was a very good scene. I mean, the Loguetown filler. The cool thing about the Loguetown figures is, even to this day, they're very memorable. People still bring them up all the time. I did a video talking about Goldie Roger a few weeks ago, and people were bringing up, like, hey, wasn't there that time Smoker saw Roger when he was a little kid? And like, no, that was just in the Loguetown fillers, but it sticks in people's minds. The cooking contest that Sanji had with Carmen, I remember that plain as day. So, I mean, I don't know who was in charge of the Loguetown arc in the anime, like who was in charge of writing out these fillers. The Daddy Masterson thing was something that Oda wrote. He planned that to be in there. He just didn't have time. He wanted the crew to hit the Grand Line by chapter 100. I think it's actually in volume 10, or it's either volume 10 or volume 11. It's volume 11. But, yeah, he planned on them hitting the Grand Line by, you know, chapter 100, so he didn't have time to do the whole Daddy Masterson thing there. It's later on revealed in a light novel. So that was from him, that was from Oda, but the bar thing and the Smoker backstory and the cooking contest, that was all anime only, but they did a pretty decent job, if I do say so myself. And so, after the whole ordeal with Buggy, and after Dragon delivers the lightning strike, and we get to see Dragon's face, although we don't know his name yet, we don't even know who the dude is. At this point, he's just badass, hooded guy with a tattoo that can control lightning, and you should be afraid of. You know, that's the only guy, and also Batman. In the Funimation dub, he's like, I'm Dragon. You know, so after that whole thing, the crew sets out to sea to deal with that island of dragons in the anime, but in the manga they head straight on to Reverse Mountain and to the Grand Line. All right. Did I do it? I think I did it. I think I got all of it. All right, I think that's the entirety of the East Blue. I think there's a few other locations, like there's the Marine base where Nezumi worked at and everything, but we're not talking about that. In terms of like the integral locations, I think I nailed pretty much everywhere in the East. Geography is, of course, everything. Don't ever forget that. I think I'm going to continue this series. Like I said, we got the halves of the Grand Line, we got the Sky Islands, we got the Moon. So we'll be talking about the Moon at some point, especially the Beaver Moon. So yeah, with that being said, I hope you guys, go out and buy some delicious Captain Morgan. I'm not sponsored by them, but I don't drink. I really don't drink. I've never been drunk my entire life. Tekking fun fact. I've never even been buzzed before. But we have the hot toddies for Christmas, supper, which is actually going to be tomorrow night. My family on my mom's side is, Russian Orthodox. And so, or Ukrainian Orthodox. And so we celebrate Christmas on January 7th every year. That's just how I've done it ever since I was a little kid. So tomorrow's Christmas Eve, January 6th. So we mix the whiskey and the honey together and have like the shots of hot toddy for like Christmas, like Nazdarovia. That's how we do it. So I've had some of that, and I've also had some Captain Morgan before. Never straight. I've mixed it with like Coke, I think, the one time, but it was pretty good stuff. So that's that. All right, but what's your favorite brand of rum? Comment below. Thanks for watching. Tekking signing out. Oh, crap. Wasn't I only supposed to say geography is everything 10 times this year? Oh, I think I really messed that up. Oh, well, what are you gonna do, right? That's all, folks. Da-da-da-da-da-da.